Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival. It's our Autumn 2020 edition, and we've got something really special tonight. Yes, it's been a weird night. We had an author drop out, and we realized that Diana didn't have her own slot. The founder of Pages Promotions and a great writer in her own way. So she is going to share with us tonight. Please help us welcome Diana Kathryn, please. Diana.
Hi, everybody. This is kind of an unusual event, but I appreciate you guys being so welcoming and so kind. Well, Andrew, go ahead.
Tell us what you're going to read for us tonight. Give us some background on the actual book.
Okay. So what I'm going to read from tonight is from my collection of short stories, and this is called A Duck Quacks. There it is right there. Some of you who already know, some of you may not. I have a muse who is a duck. His name is Drake. He's been with me since I was about 7, and he writes, I don't know, probably 90% of the good stuff. I just listen and take dictation. There was a time about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Drake said, I'm tired of playing second fiddle and you're getting all the credit, so I want to write a collection of short stories and put my name on it. So this is actually written, this is A Duck Quacks written by Drake The Duck Muse as told to Diana Kathryn Plopa, because flippers and wings don't work on keyboards. This actually came out of a funny little story. Donald Levin, who is another great Michigan writer, he and I were doing a writing workshop together. He was facilitating, I was hosting, and we had a room full of students, and they all said, you know, so Diana, you're going to take part, you're going to be part of this thing. And I said, well, you know, I've already written a memoir, because that's what the workshop was, so probably not. And he said, well, what's the most difficult genre you can imagine writing? Because I have this wacky notion that I want to write one book in each of the 35 genres. And I said, well, I can't imagine short stories, because I'm a novelist and I like detail and I like, you know, walking through all the little pieces and describing everything and giving characters lots of dialogue. And he said, okay, write a collection of short stories. I said, I just got done telling you I can't do that. And he said, yeah, I dare you. And so, of course, when somebody says, I dare you have to do it. So Drake and I had a conversation, and I said, okay, Drake, if you help me with this, we'll do it. And it was the fastest thing I've ever done. I wrote 13 short stories in about 4 months, and I've never written that fast before. I gave it back to Donald. He edited it. He came back with like 6 notes, and we published it. So that's how this book came about.
Absolutely super. Well, let's go ahead and share first, and then afterwards we'll open up the floor for questions. So
awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so this story is the shortest of the collection, and it is called Chasing the Enemy. It must have been kismet or fate or something, but when I got up that morning, I was startled to find that my pet parakeet, Destiny, had escaped from her cage. I don't remember forgetting to click the latch closed the night before after feeding her, but I can't really be sure. I was pretty hammered. It had been a long day at the office, and I allowed myself a little social sedative therapy to help me forget. A friend called just as I was leaving the office, asked me out for drinks, and long story short, the bird was now gone, and I was enduring a serious headache, the likes of which hadn't been experienced since my failed attempt at running with the bulls. But that's another story altogether. I looked everywhere for the ridiculous little bird, following tiny tufts of blue down feathers around my living room. It's not that I particularly liked the bird. She was a gift from my younger brother, a one-time wannabe bird breeder. He promised me when he decided to get out of the bird breeding business to become a suspension bridge salesman, that she was the last of his hatchling, and really parakeets were gentle, fragile creatures. He promised me that she would die before the end of the month. After all, he said, She's already nearly a year old. How long can a parakeet possibly live? He asked me that question in his rhetorical, don't you dare try to answer the question tone. So I took the bird. 2 years later, and she was still hanging on, squawking for her breakfast every morning like some demon from the ashes of a charred castle during the height of the Crusades. Destiny had deserted me, and although I was secretly elated at the prospect of the silent meditation such an event would bring into my life, I'm also an animal lover, which means it was imperative that I find her and make sure she wasn't injured. If she had found another human or perhaps a parakeet family to spend her time with, I would give her my blessing, of course. But until I knew for sure her fate, I couldn't let go of Destiny. Not finding a trace of her in the apartment, but noticing that I'd left the window over the kitchen sink ajar, I ventured out into the snowy streets in search of her. I wasn't convinced that a parakeet could survive in Michigan's first real snow of the year, 3 inches of stupid white. She's a small bird, and I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep until I knew that I'd done all I could to bring Destiny back to me, or at least witness her untimely demise and thereby absolve myself of further guilt. Out of some strange, distorted desperation, I began singing a hungover version of Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, thinking that a song might appeal to her, while secretly hoping it wouldn't. Birds really don't make great pets. Well, at least not parakeets. They're noisy. They make a terrible mess in the bottom of their cage and aren't really all that snuggly. I'm more of a dog person myself, but once you take in an animal, just like little brothers, they become part of your family, whether you truly enjoy having them around or not. Without Destiny, my life would be lacking something intangible. It was important that I did all I could to find her. I walked about 7 blocks, then turned on my heels for the frigid walk back home. When I spied her perched on the low branch of a nearby tree, she was easy to spot, blue fuff on a 3-inch line of pure white. When she saw me, she immediately began singing a beautiful rendition of some classic hymn, I think, though I'm not sure where she ever would have heard it. I'm a country music fan myself. As I stood watching her, gently coaxing her down to me, for truly, she was part of my family, a bystander of indiscriminate origin sidled up next to me and said, "What you doing there?" "I have to get her to come to me," I replied, keeping my eyes on the bird. "Why?" asked the bystander. "What's so special about such a little bird?" "It's Destiny. I invited her in, and life would be lost to me without her." "Huh," said the bystander, looking first to me, then up to the bird with an unabashed look of confusion on his face. Destiny, upon hearing my declaration, sincere in its tenor, flew down to my left shoulder, where she sat, contented in her life's validation. "Well, what do you know?" said the bystander. "It looks like Destiny has got your back." The bystander walked away as I felt the sickening warmth of bird poop seep into my sweater. The end.
Very awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lots of interesting symbolism and words there. So open up the floor. Who has questions? I know Kate always has a question.
Of course. Was this based in any way on real life?
Yes. When my son was 5, my younger brother thought he could put himself through college by breeding cockatiels.
Ooh.
And I don't know if that's actually how he was able to pay his tuition, but at one time they had something like 60 birds in a spare bedroom. And at the end of this craziness, he had 1 bird left. And he said, "Your son needs a bird. And I said, no, my son doesn't need a bird. And he says, no, really, your son needs a bird. So he talked me into it, and we took home this bird, whom my son then named Toby. And Toby ended up living, we had him when Zachary was 5, and Toby finally passed away of what we assume was a little bird heart attack when Zachary was in his junior year of high school.
Wow.
So
Wow.
birds last a long time, and this particular bird lived through 3 February moves, which I didn't really protect it all that great from the weather. So they're super hardy.
And it's something to say when it's like you have a bird as a pet. Not only will the pet Ritz probably not let me board it when I go on vacation, but you also have to make like adjustments to your will. I mean, I know that's more like parrots or something where they live the length of a human being's lifetime, but just the idea that it's like, well, there's a good chance, Birdie, that you're going to outlive me. So who among my relatives is most trustworthy and will you are the beneficiary of my estate? That's next level pet loving and
we were shocked
there.
This darn bird had lasted so many years. It was amazing.
He's going to prove you wrong. That's why. Oh yeah? Watch this.
Well, and every time I brought it up to my brother at Thanksgiving dinner, he always shifted the conversation elsewhere. So, yeah, that was fun.
You're exactly right.
Better than a drum kit or no? I mean, would you rather have had him get a drum kit or a bird?
No, the bird was better. Yeah.
Okay.
You forget I've got one ear. The drum kit was a no go.
Super duper. I did want to say, Kate, you're exactly right. I have a friend who has an African gray, and she's going up in age, but she had gotten the bird about 20 years ago. They can live to be 60.
Wow.
So much, you've got to think about a long-term plan. Who's taking my bird after I'm gone?
Yeah. So it was a curious little bird. We have pictures of Toby sitting on Zachary's sleeping head. He was a wacky little bird. So yeah, that story did come out of a moment of exasperation. The rest of it is complete fiction, but the piece about the bird and my little brother was based in fact.
Diana, I saw you turn off your mute. So do you have a question?
I don't. It was just, I've read the collection of short stories, so it was kind of nice to hear you read it versus me reading it to myself in my head. So that was kind of cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I've always found that it's different when you hear the author read their own work, which is why I wanted to do this, because it just adds another layer to the work, I think.
Absolutely, because when you put it in your mind, you had that whole meter together of how you were going to present it.
Yeah.
Don't get there.
Yeah. There's another piece in this collection that I wrote that is, it's called Grumpy's Testimony, and it's about, Diana knows, it's about the idea of putting Snow White on trial and Grumpy's in court testifying against her. So it's a fun little piece too. So.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was good.
Yeah, that was fun.
But I like the way that you equated taking in the bird and it becoming part of the family, whether you want it or not, just like with a younger brother.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't have any options when he was born either. So I was 8 when he came into the world. So
yeah, whether you want them or not.
Yeah, and once you invite them into the house, it's not like you can, put them out with Friday's recycling. You kind of got to keep them. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed at the end the outcome on your shoulder. It reminded me.
It seemed the proper commentary. Should my younger brother ever read this book, which he won't because he doesn't read, but I just thought it was fitting.
It did remind me of several jokes at the time that we won't discuss at this point.
Oh, okay. We can talk about those off camera.
Other questions and thoughts? No questions or thoughts? Dave, you're awfully quiet.
Very shy.
He is very shy.
Me too.
I feel honored that he's in the room.
Yeah, Dave, make sure that you visit Monday evening. Just
Yeah. Because, you know, we don't want to ostracize Andrew, especially since he's filling in for me today.
Well, it's just a nice temporary reversal.
It is. How much time do we have left on the clock, Andrew?
13 minutes.
Okay.
I think at this time, since there are no more questions and we have a smaller group, that you just have to lead in with Grumpy and
You want me to read Grumpy?
Read Grumpy.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
Okay.
rock Grumpy here.
Okay. Let me find it in the book. I got to find the page. Page 9.
Yay.
All right. All right, here we go. This is called Grumpy's Testimony. From the desk of Max Inc., Daily News Court Reporter, June 14, Far Away, Enchanted Kingdom, Circuit Court, Part 3. The bailiff takes his place at the front of the room and brings the gallery to order. All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Fairness presiding. The judge bangs his gavel. Take your seats, please. He acknowledges the defendant and the plaintiff sitting at their respective tables and nods to their attorneys. He looks at the defense attorney. Call your first witness. Mr. Snide, counsel for the defense, Queen Anais, Your Honor. On the third day of due process, we call Mr. Grumpy Dwarf to the stand. Mr. Grumpy Dwarf shuffles up to the witness box, his hat in his hand, and a scowl on his face. Mr. Snide sidles up to the witness box, the pants of his perfectly tailored suit holding their creases flawlessly as he walked. Now, Mr. Dwarf, begins Mr. Snide. The name's Grumpy, if you don't mind, he says with a grumble and a sneer. Yes, certainly. Grumpy, you've already been sworn in. Please tell the court, in your own words, what transpired during the week in question. Transpired? Says Grumpy. Yes, says Snide. What happened? Ah, you got some fancy words, don't you, mister? Well, I suppose it started off as any other regular week. Me and the boys were headed off to the mines to dig stuff out, like we always do. And when we came back, this hussy was in our house. Downright rude, if you ask me. Is the woman you speak of in the courtroom today? Asks Snide. Yes, sir. She's sitting right there. Grumpy points a stubby left thumb at Snow White, sitting at the plaintiff's table. He points with his thumb because he lost the first two fingers of that hand some years ago in a mining accident. It's only part of the reason for his sullied mood, but that's another story. If it pleases the court, let the record reflect that Grumpy Dwarf has indicated Miss Snow White. Go on, Grumpy, continue with your account. Ain't giving you no money, mister, roils Grumpy. No, sir, not money. Your account, your story of what happened that week, corrects Mr. Snide. He waggles his head in disbelief, not quite loud enough for the journey to hear, chides, where did they find this guy? He's a moron. Well, like I said, I was heading back from the mines, all hungry and such, just looking for a little dinner and rest. And when Grumpy's face turns bright crimson and his beard prickles away from his face, making him look like a startled porcupine. Calm down, Grumpy, sir. Just tell us what transpired, reminds Mr. Snide. Fine, he says, clearing the anger from his throat. She comes into our house, uninvited, and starts rummaging around. She moves stuff we didn't want moved, cobwebs and stuff. She washed the dishes that we on purpose left in the sink. No need for her to do that. We got more. And she made the beds, too. The gall, I tell you. And then, when we got home, she made us bathe. I don't know who this harlot thought she was strutting into our home and like she ran the place. The others, well, they went right along, swayed by a pretty face they were, but not me. Oh no, I stood my ground. I told them, we can't keep her. She's not a puppy, after all. And for my mind, a heap more trouble. I know somebody would be missing her and coming for her and wreck our lives even more than this one already did. I reckon they'd even come for the mine. But did the boys listen to me? No. They just pranced around the house like Dopey there, all twitter-pated with stupidity. It was disgraceful. Then what happened, Mr. Grumpy? Cajoled Snide once again. Well, it's just as I told them, but they didn't want to listen to me. No, those ingrates. Sometimes I think the lot of them is just simply daft. Start crazy, I tell you. Grumpy was working himself up into a general froth now, spittle dripping from the corner of his mouth, when he lost some control in that past mining accident, but I digress. Mr. Snide enjoyed the theatrics of his star witness and egged him on further. Go on, sir. Just recount the facts for the court. How did things change for your clan after Snow White entered your lives? Well, as I said, the day of reckoning finally came. She didn't listen to us, let some stranger into the house, and bam! Next thing you know, she's laying on the floor, near dead. I said good riddance to you, but the boys, oh, those foolish curs, they were smitten, brainwashed, I tell you. They actually wanted to put her in some stupid glass box to keep her forever. We're minors, for crimini's sakes, not taxidermists. I just don't know what they were thinking. The whole thing was like making gold out of a box of rocks, I tell you. Please continue, Snide encouraged, eager to capture the audience with the climax of the story. Well, that's when it happened, said Grumpy in a voice that was almost a whisper. Quite the feat for such a crotchety old man. Mr. Snide leaned in real close, his voice low, his body tense. What, Mr. Grumpy? What happened? We had to deal with, I can hardly say it. Grumpy looked away from Snide toward the townsfolk in the jury box. His face held the shame he knew was real. Go ahead, said Mr. Snide. Take your time. Find your words, Mr. Grumpy. What did you have to deal with? Snide was waiting for the magnificent punchline he knew would sway this case. Love, howled Grumpy. Mr. Snide took a step back, eyed the jury with a heavily loaded, pregnant pause, and said, Love, sir? Yes, love, followed Grumpy. It's outrageous. We never had to deal with that infernal nonsense before. Our lives were simple. We went to the mine every day. We did our work, came home, ate a bit, slept a bit, and got up the next day to do it all over again. We had a good life. And then this wretched female comes along and made us all care for her. She wrecked everything. Bollocksed up the whole works, I tell you. Now we had this woman to care for, and she took her toll on us, I might tell you. All that washing and proper table manners and making the beds each morning, it was ridiculous. We had a good life before she came, and then she went and complicated it all to pieces. The nerve of that woman. The boys and I actually started caring. That's enough to drive a person daft, I tell you. Grumpy took a moment and looked around the room for some sign that he'd made his point, knowing that surely there would be others in the courtroom who'd heard his plight and understood. Blank faces stared back at him. Grumpy went on with his story, hopeful that someone would understand and be on his side. And then, when she was laying there in that pretty box sleeping and such, well, I thought that finally we were rid of her. Finally, we could have our own lives back. No more washing, no more cleaning, no more caring. But she couldn't leave well enough alone. No, not this one. No, sir. He thrust his stubby thumb at Snow White again, punctuating his disdain. Mr. Snide coaxed him again, directing the play with just as much intensity as he thought the judge would allow. We want to hear your story, Mr. Grumpy. Tell us what happened. Well, this fancy pants prince came along and kissed her. Can you imagine the unmitigated nerve of the fellow? I mean, kissing a near dead lady. Have you ever heard of such nonsense? Grumpy spat his disgust at the prince, who sat beside Snow White. What happened after the kiss, Mr. Grumpy? Cajoled Snide again. Well, she surprised us all, she did. She sat right up and kissed him right back. Then she jumped out of her glass box and said that we were all going to live with Mr. Fancy Pants in his castle someplace farther away from the mine. What right did she have to say where we could live? And we didn't have no say in it either. It's just wrong, I tell you. Grumpy's face lit up like Rudolph's red nose, his whiskers live with static electricity. So, interjected Mr. Snide, she wanted to essentially kidnap you and take you away from the only home you've ever known. That right, sir? Snide had a cat ate the canary grin on his face. He was proud of his star witness. Grumpy sure is hitting this one out of the park, he murmured to no one in particular. Darn right, that's right. And she ain't got no right. I'm still the only one in charge of me. Ain't nothing gonna change that. Grumpy pounded his fist on the witness box and looked adamantly at the judge. It's criminal, I tell you, just criminal. She should be in jail or something. Just ain't right. The judge sat stoic, unaffected by the theatrics. Thank you, Mr. Grumpy, said Mr. Snide. You may step down. The judge banged his gavel on the desk once again. Okay, folks, we'll take a short recess and return for Mr. Sneezy's testimony after lunch. Court adjourned.
That was absolutely super. We have time for one question.
Okay. Anybody have questions? Go ahead, Kate.
Go, Kate.
Have you ever seen the fairy tale theater with Shelley Duvall where they did Snow White?
Yeah.
I love that with Barnabas and the stupid assumptions. That just your story just gave me life. It just made me so happy.
I honestly didn't think of that when I wrote this piece. Somebody came to me in a writer's group I was facilitating and said, okay, here's a challenge, rewrite a fairy tale and do it in under 5,000 words. And I went, okay, that's a challenge, I got to do it. So that's where that story came from.
Nice, love it.
Thank you.
Super and fantastic. We're going to have to end up today. I really appreciate everybody being here, and especially because we've been here to celebrate Diana Kathryn Plopa and her book. This has been fantastic. Her book, written by a muse. I think it's really good, but I also think that she needs a second muse. Do you know why? Because then she'd have a paradox.
Oh, wow. Okay. That was so bad.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. This is the Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival. This has been fantastic. Our autumn, look forward to more fantastic authors over the next several days. Thank you to our special guest, Diana Kathryn Plopa, and all of our great people that are here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your indulgence tonight.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.